All right, so here's my setup. I've got a Hiblo right here. I believe that's the 120 model. Yeah, there it is, 120 LL. Up there. Anyway, I belong to a pond group on Facebook, and the experts say these things are only good for about 6 feet or so, and my pond's only about 6 feet deep, so perfect. If you have a pond that's deeper, you might need the compressor piston type of aerator pump, and that probably uses a lot more juice. This thing only uses about 100 watts, so that was important to know when I went to build my solar system. The aerator itself out there in the pond is just a homemade job, PVC pipe with some holes drilled in it, and use the weighted hose here. It's probably the better way to go from what I hear. It's nice and lays down on the pond, so you don't have to try and weight something out. And then I played with solar, my first time playing with solar. So these are Harbor Freight solar panels. They're like about $100 each, and they put out about 100 watts each. So you're paying $1 per watt, if I did my math right. Anyway, you're probably going, first of all, thinking, what in the world, why aren't they all pointing the same direction? Well, I could have pointed them all in the same direction, but since I'm only pulling approximately 100 watts, I wanted to be able to get the most time of day, the most time of my pump running, the most aeration hours. And I was thinking if I basically point one, so that one right there in the middle, he's pointing pretty much due south, according to my compass when I hooked it up. And this guy's pointing 90 degrees to that, obviously, so he's pointing due east. And this guy right here is pointing due west. Well, if you know anything about the path of how the earth rotates with the sun, rises, sunsets, of course, summer, winter, they're not going to be exactly due east and due west, but I still get, like, the south one gets mostly sun, right, most of the day. During the morning, the east one will get, obviously, some good, nice sunshine. And then, as you can tell, it's afternoon now, so I don't know if you can see that or not, but they're shaded on that solar panel, so he's not producing a lot of watts. And then this guy, since it's afternoon, hardly any shadow from the middle one showing there, so he's getting quite a bit of. So between these two, right, is charging my battery. Now that's another reason I did this. When I had 2 or 3 panels pointing due south, they produce a lot more watts, and the charge controller, which I'm using Renogy, it goes up a lot more in voltage then, and that voltage would trip my inverter. So you like my this is my box that holds my battery and stuff. These awesome clamps here, right? High dollar. It does the trick. The whole point is to keep this lid down when the winds kick up. And you can probably see there's some water on the lid. It rained recently, but this stays dry. And I also have, it's just a tote box, and I cut some holes and put in these vents so this thing won't get too hot in the summer. And so far, it's been running for about a year now, and it's been doing great. So I got the Wanderer solar charge controller. I've got a low voltage cutoff. That's from Amazon. I'll put links below and the video to everything that I have in here, except for the inverter. The inverter is something I had from a long time ago, Harbor Freight. They probably don't even sell this model anymore. But it's probably overkill too. It's really big, but it is not quite as sensitive on having too much or too little voltage. I found the little ones on Amazon, kind of sensitive in that way. And then you gotta get another module in here that will do like a voltage step down. So I tried that. In fact, I didn't have a battery at first. It's a nice big Renogy battery there too. I first started doing this, I wanted to just do direct drive off of solar, so you don't have a battery, you don't have a charge controller, you just have a battery and an inverter. And I thought, well, that should work, right? Well, and in theory it should. A couple things that work against you though. Number one, these solar panels put out a lot of voltage. You do your step down voltage, which will run it in ideal conditions, But if the sun goes behind a cloud suddenly and your voltage drops suddenly, then that trips the low voltage circuitry inside of your inverter will trip, and then your little guy's not running anymore. And the only way to reset that, at least with this guy, is you got to power it off and power it back on again. It will alarm. So what you want to do is have a voltage cutoff, like this guy, that would completely cut off the voltage before your low voltage sensor trips on your inverter. But I tried over and over and over and over, trying to tune that just right, and that voltage would drop so suddenly, it seemed like it wasn't quick enough for that low voltage disconnect to disconnect it. So got tired of fighting it, finally bit the bullet, spent some money getting a nice big battery, getting the charge controller, and I even got, I don't know if you can tell, I got a little Bluetooth guy so I could see what's going on with it. And it's been running, like I said, pretty much flawlessly for almost a year now. And like I said, I'm only pulling 100 watts off of that Hiblo. I get, in a nice sunny day, you know, like what we're experiencing now, I get, gosh, it probably kicks on about 9 o'clock, and it kicks off maybe 8 o'clock. So I'm getting 11 hours in the summer, pretty good. In the winter, it still works pretty well. And even on a cloudy day, this thing will be on, right? So this little, you can set your voltage disconnects. I wanted it to keep that battery nice and healthy. So, you know, I could probably have it on longer, you know, 12 hours, maybe a little more, but it would drain my battery more. And then of course in the morning it would take longer to charge it up before kick in again. So who knows, maybe I wouldn't get that much more out of it. But one thing I can tell you also is when these, that Wanderer charge controller, when he is charging, he's putting out a lot of voltage also into that battery. And so he'll actually put out more voltage into that battery than this inverter likes, and that inverter would trip. And so when I had 2 or 3 panels all pointing south, that combination of that many watts charging into that charge controller, once that battery got to where it was peaked, the charge controller goes into like a boost mode, and in that boost mode, that voltage is higher to try and, I guess, I don't know details, I'm not an expert on this, but my guess is that somehow trying to get that battery into an even healthier state to where it'll last longer maybe, or I don't know. Anyway, when that happens, it's just too much voltage for that inverter, and so he will trip. And so the only way to fix that is to turn it off and turn it on. Well, that's another reason I have the solar setup I do, one facing south, one east, one west, is just enough so that this one gives me 100 watts fully, right, when it's at like noon. This one gives me, you know, maybe 20 extra watts, 50 extra watts, whatever it happens to be, when you count in, you know, how much of the shadow from this guy is over it, right? Same thing during the afternoon. So, you know, I'm not getting a full, you know, 250, 300 watts, whatever they could put out if they're all south at the same time during like the middle of the day. But that's good, because that means my battery never gets charged so much that that the charge controller thinks he can go into boost mode and try and make that battery super healthy, which, you know, maybe my battery won't last as long that way, but it's better than me having to come down here and reset my inverter every time. Now, what I could do is get that step down transformer I mentioned earlier, put that in line and try and step it down before it goes to the inverter so that it never receives, like, I think it's 15 volts when it shuts off. But then I'm also, you know, possibly, you know, shutting off earlier than I want at night, right? Because that step down is like a permanent step down. If it steps it down a whole voltage, you know, instead of having, you know, 12 volts when that battery gets so low, instead of 12 volts going to that inverter, it'd only be 11, so you'd have to shut off sooner. So anyway, that's why I have what I have. Like I said, I'll put in the links to what I've got into here, except for the Harbor Freight inverter. They have others, of course, you can get, or you can get one off Amazon. These, I did splurge a little also and get these nice, you know, hardware to hold up the solar panels. It allows you to set the angles really nicely. It's super sturdy. And I set this just a 4x4, you know, pressure treated lumber. Set it inside concrete by my pond. And anyway, use the concrete blocks to keep things, you know, off the dirt a little bit. I even have like a little, you can't see here, but there's a little wood block underneath that battery, because I know, or I've been told, that battery shouldn't, you know, sit on the ground or concrete directly. So I don't know, I did it. Hopefully it helps. And also you can see it's nice and nice and dry in there. So these vents allow that air to circulate without letting the rain in. So it's a decent setup. Clamps are kind of cheap, obviously. But anyways, that's what it is. Hopefully this helps somebody who's got a pond with you know, a pump that's too far from running electricity. So that's kind of my situation. And you know, I said earlier these were like $100 each for the solar panels. I think that Hiblo was like maybe 100, 120. I don't remember exactly how much it was. Inverter I had, I don't remember how much it cost me originally. You can get them, you know, the Amazon ones for $30, $50, whatever. Charge controller I think was $30. The low voltage disconnect, I got that off Amazon too. I can't remember exactly what it cost. Like I said, I'll put links below. It wasn't that much though, maybe $10. The battery's probably one of the more expensive things. I think that's around $200. You know, and it depends on how many amps you want to get. That's a 100 amp hour one. And you have to replace those probably every 3 years is my guess. That's what I'm told, 3 to 5, something like that. Just like a car battery. It only takes so many charging cycles. These clamps weren't cheap. I can't remember exactly what they were, but they were not cheap. But I figured, you know, if they can help me hold up the winds and get the angle just right, it was worth it. One-time investment, and you got electricity for a long, long time. So anyways, comment below if you got any questions or suggestions, or if you're an expert and you want to tell me what I did wrong so I won't change anything. Because it works for me. Oh, and I also put in this this little plastic wrapping, and oh yeah, because I have 3 solar panels, that's a little Harbor Freight job also that allows you to take in multiple panels with one output. So got that guy, and then this little like automotive type covering, cable covering type stuff. Try and weather protect it a little bit. Anyways, have a good day. I hope this helps somebody.